Christmas is that time of year where families get together. You go to church, you have that nap of a lifetime. You often don't think about murder happening on Christmas, right? Well, in this mini series on the TCL, we will discuss five cases that have occurred on Christmas. If you watched my Christmas Murders video, then you should know I'm probably not going to do all those videos. I decided against it, but there are some that I actually am going to do, which I'm not going to name which ones, but you'll just have to see. Watch and see. Before I dive into the first episode of our mini series, this is the podcast to my YouTube channel. I also have a Patreon that you can support, and by joining that, which you will receive early access to miniseries and season episodes that are scheduled to come out. And I also have a merch shop that you can go and buy something from as well. Come on, last minute Christmas shoppers, I know y'all out there. Alright. I also have a Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for updates. Now, why don't we dive into the first episode of our miniseries, Christmas Murders. And as we show how murder knows no holiday. Now, one thing I want to clarify. This episode is pre-recorded the week of Thanksgiving, and y'all know, anybody who knows me knows how I hate pre-Christmas, but I am in school, so I have to get this done when I can, so it could be ready to come out, right? Well, on our first episode of the Christmas Murders miniseries, we will be discussing the case of Marvallous Keene. Now, it's not a name I pulled out of a hat. It's a name I actually did my research on. Excuse me. He is a murderer known for at least 5 victims from December 24th to December 26th in 1992. His victimology includes Joseph Wilkerson, Danita Gullette, Sarah Abraham, Wendy Cottrill, and Marvin Washington. His methodology was shooting, and he was executed by lethal injection in Ohio, July 21st, 2009. So, Keene was the head of the downtown posse of juveniles and young adults in Dayton. He was working with 3 young co-conspirators, and he would murder an acquaintance, Joseph Wilkerson, who was 34, who would also murder a stranger using a public telephone on the street, Danita Gullette, who was 18. He would also murder a clerk at a convenience store before Sarah Abraham, who was 38. He feared that they would snitch on him, and he was also involved in the silencing of 2 acquaintances who knew too much, Wendy Cottrill, who was 16, and Marvin Washington, who was 18. Washington was shot by his co-conspirator, DeMarcus Smith. Keene's girlfriend, Laura Taylor, was the 6th victim. And Richmond Maddox, who was 19, who would kill the 6th victim, Richmond Maddox, who was 19. So these crimes would span from December 24th to December 25th, 1992, and they became known as the Christmas Killings. Taylor and Smith were both juveniles at the time of the killings, making them ineligible for the death penalty. Another defendant, Heather Matthews, was indicted on 2 capital murder charges, but was granted a plea agreement in exchange for her testimony against Keene and Taylor. So, in all, Smith, Taylor, and Matthews are all serving prison sentences in excess of 100 years. So here's the thing. So Keene's final meal was a porterhouse steak with an A1 sauce, a pound of jumbo fried shrimp with cocktail sauce, French fries, onion rings with ketchup, dinner rolls, and buttered 2 plums, a mango, a pound of seedless ripe grapes, and a German chocolate cake, 2 bottles of Pepsi, 2 bottles of A&W cream water, and his final words were, "I have no words." The irony of the whole statement, right? So, Keene would arrive in Lucasville at 9:43 from death row at Ohio State Penitentiary in Youngstown. He did not request family members and no relatives to attend. In fact, two attorneys from the Ohio Public Defender's Office were his chosen witnesses. Strange, I know, right? So, what happened with his crimes? Well, working with the three young co-conspirators, he would murder um, Wilkerson, Gullette, and Abraham. When he feared that they would snitch on him, and he became involved in silencing two of them. So about the aftermath, well, Taylor and Smith were juvenile at the time of the killings, thus ineligible for the death penalty. Another defendant, Heather Matthews, was indicted on two capital murder charges, but was granted a plea agreement in exchange for her testimony. And fun fact, he was the second Ohioan to be executed in a week. The Ohio Supreme Court changed the procedure so that executions were recorded no closer than 3 weeks apart. Outside the prison, 25 protesters were saying Amazing Grace as the battered black hearse carried King's body away. Now that is definitely ironic right there. Well, let's see. What do we know? Well, we know Keene. On December 24th, 1992, Keene and Taylor enlisted Matthews to help rob Joseph Wilkerson, an acquaintance of Taylor's. Taylor told Matthews that he had arranged for three of them to go to Wilkerson's apartment in pretext to have an orgy with Wilkerson. Weird, I know. So Matthews agreed to take part in the robbery. Keene, Taylor, and Matthews walked to Wilkerson's house. After a drink, Wilkerson and Taylor went to the bedroom where they briefly. After waiting briefly, Keene and Matthews followed them. Wilkerson began taking his clothes off. Taylor and Matthews pretended to do the same, and Keene began to remove his own pants, but then pulled back and drew a gun. He ordered Wilkerson onto the bed, and then commanded Taylor and Matthews to the Wilkerson hands. While Keene watched Wilkerson, Taylor and Matthews went through the house looking to steal things. And they took a microwave oven, a TV, a cordless phone, a curling iron, and a blow dryer, which they loaded into the Wilkerson's Buick. And they told Keene that he kept a 32 caliber Derringer in the garage. Keene found it and brought it back to the bedroom and subsequently confessed that he shot Wilkerson in the chest with a Derringer after covering his own wet blankets to muffle the noise. Taylor and Matthews began to hear the shots. Returning to the bedroom, they saw Keene holding their Derringer. Wilkerson's feet were shaking, and Keene handed the Derringer to Taylor, but he would not fire again. And so, later that evening, Keene, Taylor, and Smith went walking. Keene and Smith were carrying guns. Keene later confessed to the police that they were walking and they saw Danita Gullette at public telephone, and Smith and Keene drew their guns, and Smith forced Gullette at gunpoint to take her shoes off. Taylor was also wearing Gullette's jacket, and Smith was carrying Gullette's shoes. So later that night, Smith shot Matthew's boyfriend, Jeffrey Wright, outside 159 Yuma, with Keene, Matthews, and Taylor and Smith then left the Wilkerson's Buick on December 25th. Keene returned to the Wilkerson house and stole more items, including his other car, a Pontiac. Also, on December 25th, he robbed and murdered her former boyfriend. Taylor robbed and murdered her former boyfriend, Richmond Maddox. Early in the morning of December 26th, Matthews drove the Pontiac to a BP service station, where Keene and Smith stole Kathy Henderson's car at gunpoint and drove off in Henderson's car. Matthew followed the Pontiac later that morning and drove the Pontiac to a shortstop mini mart, while Keene, Smith, and Taylor in the car. Taylor went into the store, then came back with a when he only other two people inside. Matthews handed a 32 caliber revolver to Smith. Smith and Keene were also carrying a 25 caliber automatic pistol. Keene and Smith went into the store. Oh. Went into the store. I don't forget my. Oh, there he goes. Then came back to report that there was only two people inside. Smith and Keene also carrying a 25 automatic pistols. Keene and Smith went into the store. Sarah Abraham, whose family owned the store, was working behind the cashier, ordered her at gunpoint to open it. Abraham did and removed $40, then she handed it to Keene. Keene shot Abraham in the head. Several days later, Abraham died in the room. Smith also shot two other people, Jones Pettis, a customer, wounding him, and Edward Thompson, a helper. Both of them survived and testified against Keene. So later that day, Taylor and Matthews discussed jumping Cottrill because they thought she was telling on us. And according to Matthews' testimony, there was no discussion of shooting her. But in a conversation with Keene, Taylor, Matthews, and Wilson, Smith said that he would be going to unload a clip and blanks A. And you could probably figure out what I'm saying, but, okay? We'll say but. So, according to Keene's confession, Smith thought that Wendy and Marvin were going to snitch about shooting Jeff Wright. So the group discussed picking up Washington and Cottrill up and taking them to a park or something. And so they would drive to 159 Yuma, picked up them, then dropped Woodson off at his home, and then drove to a gravel pit. And as the gravel pit, Smith ordered Washington out of the car. So the grand jury would indict him on 8 counts of aggravated murder, 2 counts for Wilkerson, Washington, and Cottrill, and 1 count for each for Gullette and Abraham. The Wilkerson's count was carried by 6 death penalty specifications. I don't know why that came out. In the Cottrill counts, he carried 4 death specifications. The Washington's counts carried 3 death specifications. The Gullette and Abraham had carried 2. So, the indictment also included 6 counts of aggravated robbery, 1 of aggravated burglary, 1 count of burglary, the counts of kidnapping, and 2 counts of attempted aggravated murder. All counts carry a firearm. So, waiving the jury, Keene was tried to a 3-judge panel where they found him all guilty on all counts. I guess he found, like, if he does a jury, they wouldn't buy it. So if he raised the jury, I guess. Here we go. Oh, okay. Alright. So, what about the downtown posse? Well, the prosecutors would describe Keene as the ringleader of the group and called itself Downtown Posse. And the killings began with 34-year-old Joseph Wilkerson and Keene with his accomplices at the Wilkerson home in the pretext of wanting to participate in an orgy. They also tied Wilkerson, tied him to his bed, ransacked his house, and when Keene found the 32 caliber handgun in the garage, he returned to the bedroom to shot Wilkerson twice. So on Christmas Eve, Keene and his accomplice DeMarcus Smith would approach the 18-year-old Danita Gullette at a payphone, take her jacket, and choose to fatally shoot the woman. So, Ohio has put 31 men to death since it reinstated the death penalty in 1999. John Fortenberry, 45, a former Oregon truck driver who went on to multi-state killing spree in the early 1990s, will be executed that same week. So Christmas Eve, 24th, 1992, would all start about 7 a.m. when they would drive the red Buick back the bills, unloaded the trunk, and then slept at his apartment till noon, and they got up, went downtown, spent the afternoon hanging out the courthouse square in the arcade. Later that evening, Taylor wanted to rob a truck, and Ken Smith drove her to Main Street, and when they lured her into the car, and Keene and Smith followed the Buick, and then stopped at Neil Avenue. Smith got outside the Buick and shot out the back window, with Taylor still in the car. The trick highlighted it for Main Street, and over the bridge downtown began to the Dayton Police Headquarters on 3rd Street. Keene and Smith followed but soon quit the chase. The two drove around for a while until Smith decided to look for Taylor, and Keene left on Main Street carrying a gun. Eventually, Keene, Taylor, and Smith all returned to Yuma Place, but left again that night in the Buick for another victim they found at a public payphone. So when dispatchers contacted the members of the Dayton Homicide Squad that night, Detective Doyle Burke was at his aunt's house on Christmas dinner, and Detectives Wade and Tom Lawson, brothers who lived in Miamisburg, were with their families, and Sergeant Larry Grossnickel was at the evening service of Happy Corner Church in Breton, Inglewood. This was all not unusual for them to be on call 24 hours a day, and Christmas was no exception. But it was so on December 26, 1992, around the shooting the time at Yuma's place late Christmas Eve, the gang changed its choice to hang out and elude the police. Now they gather at the Cumler Avenue on Sandra Pinson, the mother of another gang member, 16-year-old Dion, the aunt of 17-year-old Nicholas Wilson. The youth talked about a way to get quick cash, and then took off in 2 cars, but somewhere between 1 and 2 a.m. the cars separated. They still had no cash, and Keene and Smith decided they should rob a store. Right? Yeah, 'cause that's what we do on Christmas, right? No, it's not. So, so 3 plainclothes officers with riot shotguns emerged from the side street, and 3 more backup units pulled in behind Herbert. Every officer had their gun pointed at the shadow. Shouts of "Get out of the car!" and ricochet throughout the suspects that came out. They found Keene 25 caliber nickel-plated handgun under the driver's seat, one of Wendy Cottrill's delicate gold necklaces around Keene's neck, and he was wearing Danita's red and white plaid jacket. In his pocket of commemorative pocket knife, and a match that matched the 3 knives Wilkerson gave each of his male relatives. Interesting. So he stole one of them and then gave them as Christmas present. Well, what was the culmination? Well, the police coverage of the Wilkerson home about 3 p.m. found no signs of forced entry, but the door was unlocked with no one answering. In the living room, there was furniture overturned and scattered. The TV set appeared to be missing, but on the empty stand, only one clue. The kitchen in the back was even a bigger mess. Cabinets open, contents spilled, silverware, magazine coins was thrown through. A small microwave appeared to be missing from its niche. So then they would make their way to the bedroom, and they would find his body in the middle of the room. Arms spread, his wrists tied to the bed with electrical cord, but his face covered with blood quills. He then had an apparent gunshot to the right eye, another to the left chest. In the bed, tangled sheets from Burke said, an aluminum for a 25 caliber laser. That was the culmination for everything. So what about a cold-hearted girl? Well, the four suspects were now in custody. They were integrated in separate rooms, and Keene, Smith, and Matthews volunteered nearly everything. Nearly, because no one mentioned what happened to Cottrill or Washington at the gravel storage area. And then again, the investigators, who knew nothing of the source of those murders, had asked Keene to cooperate, and he was answering yes and no, so a throwback to perhaps his quiet boy days. So what happened December 27, 1992? Well, at 4:45, Burke and his family was with his family date in Ohio with a Christmas dinner that was 2 days late. He felt good about the four suspects were off the street, and then the phone rang when he heard the Rev. He had paged him, and the Reverend never bothered at once unless it was urgent. Two more bodies, he said, about 5:30. Investigators scoured the streets of Richley Avenue, and it was woods across from Louise Toy School. And those bodies, can you believe who they were? Yep. The two that Keene had failed to mention. Yeah. Alright, y'all, that is it for today's episode. I will see y'all next time. Y'all have a great day. Merry Christmas. And don't kill anybody.